Competitive play in Overwatch is simply not fair. That is something that a lot of you guys have said under my video covering the allegation that Blizzard forces 50% win rates on us when playing ranked. Something I hinted at in that video was kind of lost in translation because a lot of people were so focused on calling bullshit on the fact that the matchmaker supposedly creates fair 50% win chance matches on the regular. Now, I know that a lot of people are feeling very strongly about that subject in particular and ranked in general. When we are putting all of our effort into trying to win, ending up losing because of something that is outside of our control is beyond frustrating. And you know, you are not completely wrong when you're saying that ranked in Overwatch is not fair, but perhaps not for the reasons that you thought. In the previously referenced video, we talked about the slight SR modifiers that are in place, granting you favorable or unfavorable SR gains and losses when certain criteria are met. According to the developers, if your chance to win is above 50%, you gain less SR, and if it is under 50%, you gain more SR when ending up victorious. And that should make sense to all of us, considering the fact that winning a game against stronger opponents makes a case for you being a player that deserves to be higher in rating. And if you prove that by consistently performing above your peers, the SR system will grant you more SR to get you closer to your true skill. What you have rightfully criticized about that principle is that the devs make it sound like these 50% win chance matches happen more often than they really do. Again, we have talked about the difference between win chance and win rate in the previous video, but the player base is convinced that these fair matches giving everyone a 50% win chance don't actually occur anywhere near often enough. And that's what I want to talk about today. How and why is ranked in Overwatch not fair? For the purpose of open discussion in this video, I need to ask you guys to throw away the idea that an elo hell exists. Not because I want you to agree with me, but because if we surrender to that principle, this entire discussion is going to be stopped dead in its tracks based on anecdotes and personal feelings. At the end of this video, I'm not necessarily expecting you to agree with my assessment. Not at all. I just want you to start considering things you may have overlooked up until now. So our problem with a competitive ladder in Overwatch is not the lack of opportunities to rank up. It is the inevitability of losses in games where we are performing as well as we can. If we take what the developers have said at face value and believe that the majority of our player base is sitting around a 50% win rate, then that suggests that the matchmaker is indeed putting these 50% win chance matches in front of us on a regular. But in practice, this is not at all what is happening. Even when statistically we are starting a match with a 50% chance to win, which for all intents and purposes should make for a perfectly balanced match of competitive, the reasons we end up losing for have nothing to do with any of these statistics. Think back to your last few sessions of competitive play. Why did you lose your matches? Was it because you were outplayed, outclassed, outskilled? Did you feel like you had a fair chance to win at any point in time throughout that match? According to many voices in our community, no, that is not at all the case. The inevitability of losses comes from factors the matchmaker does not seem to take into consideration. For example, hero choice, willingness to cooperate, or even just accessibility to communication tools. The fact that they allow somebody to participate in competitive play when they have been muted for repeated offenses of harassment is an outright joke. Even Heroes of the Storm understand that a player that is unable to communicate is a liability to any team, and they don't allow these players to participate on ladder until their punishment has expired. To get back to the other factors we listed, let's take another example. Somebody who displays a sufficient level of proficiency when playing Junkrat, for example, is more likely to underperform on maps that feature open spaces. I'd be hard-pressed to believe that the matchmaker considers hero pick and win rates for specific maps before throwing players into a match, and I think many of you would agree. How often did you think to yourself, oh no, this guy is maining hero XYZ and we are playing map so-and-so, we are already at a disadvantage? Objectively, that is exactly what's happening. You can be as good as you want on whatever hero, but if the map you play on puts your hero of choice at a distinct disadvantage, then this 50% chance to win will be skewed against you. But if you still end up winning, the game is not going to treat that match as though you were the underdog, even if you were at a disadvantage. Because on paper, in the grand scheme of things, considering their average performance for this entire season, that player is deemed equal in skill to you and everyone else who's participating. At the end of the day, the disadvantage that your team was put into is not something enforced by the matchmaker and its choice of player. It's the player itself that decided to do something that puts their team at a disadvantage. I think you get where I'm going with this. Even when the matchmaker does a good job of putting 50% win chance matches in front of us, individual players themselves time and time again decide to put put their team at a disadvantage by making specific choices, including deciding to not cooperate, playing heroes that don't make any sense given the map you're playing, or outright refusing to communicate. If you are then playing against a team that does all of these things, cooperating, communicating, and playing heroes that make sense, then you are at a disadvantage that the matchmaker cannot take into consideration. What I want to say with this is not that ELO hell exists and that everyone sits at ranks that they are not supposed to be in, because what the developers are seemingly banking on here is that all this eventually balances itself out. Yes, that Doomfist one trick might not be very useful in your game because you play on a map that makes it very difficult to make him work, but if that player participates in enough matches, then they are eventually going to have played enough games on enough maps to have established an average performance that the matchmaker takes into consideration. That can very well mean that they play like an absolute god on some maps and like a boosted pleb on others. And that is true for pretty much all of us. We all have heroes we're better at than others, and we all have maps that we do better or worse on. Sometimes we do really well, and other times we really don't. But if we all play enough ranked matches, we will eventually have established an average performance that puts us into a certain rating that is comparable to others of our skill. And I believe that this is why most of us are sitting around 50% win rates. Yes, it balances itself out if we play enough, but that doesn't make the matches themselves fair. As someone who records his own gameplay, I can tell you that there are tons of matches where I win because somebody on the enemy team is feeding their brains out, and I lose a lot because the same thing happens with somebody on my team. Most of the matches we participate in don't feel like fair and square 50% win chance matches because they're not 50% win chance matches relative to each individual matchup. These kinds of inconsistencies are something I've covered in my video titled My Biggest Problem with Overwatch, so if you are interested in hearing more about that, feel free to check out that video. But bottom line is that we are all good at different things. We are all specialists in our own right. None of us are gods on every hero playing on every map with any lineup that our team decides to run. There are so many different factors that have to be taken into consideration when talking about objectively fair matches that I can't blame the matchmaker for not including it. I mean, how would it? It is putting 50% win chance matches in front of us while considering our average performance. But most of the things that make these matches unfair in the end are problems that individual players impose on themselves and their team, like a lack of flexibility, cooperation, or expertise. Overwatch is simply way too diverse to make that possible, if you ask me at least. But you know what I find funny? That people are calling me a Blizzard shill, excusing things that they hate when watching videos of mine where I try to explain something to the best of my capability. Mostly community misconceptions. I mean, if you watched any number of my videos, you'll know damn well that I've ruined any chance for myself to ever get in contact with Blizzard. I criticized this game for a lot of things because I wanted to improve rather than going the opposite direction. But first and foremost, I want our community to be more open-minded. A lot of us are so hung up on believing that we are right that we don't even consider the possibility of us having misunderstood something. And when it comes to the allegation that the game forces a 50% win rate on us, or even the assumption that the matchmaker is inherently broken, I believe that things are not as simple as most people make it out to be. Yes, I curse the matchmaker myself all the time. I mean, just the other day I felt like they kept giving me the worst players imaginable while playing against absolute tryhards. But that's just what happens thanks to a lack of cohesion in game design. At least that is my belief. I'm being told that I'm wrong on a daily in the comment section because I too am just human. And I learn things from you guys all the time. Not everything I say is necessarily factually correct since I'm not a developer or anything. But at the end of the day, I just try to get people to hold open discussions about things that are more complicated than "this is broken and I hate it." And I want to thank you all for coming along on the ride. But this is me done for the day as I talk about why I believe ranked is not fair in Overwatch. As always, my friends, leave all of your thoughts and opinions on the subject in question down in the comment section below. But until then, thank you everybody so much for watching. Don't forget to drop me a like on your way out if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want to see more, and maybe share this video with a friend you think would find it interesting. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you all next time.